In today's episode, we're talking about pivoting in your business. And this has been on the forefront for me personally with my business for quite some time. And I have gone through the changes and the pivoting, and it's still going to be continuing as we move forward. But something that can be challenging or hard when you've got a business that is established, you've got signature offers that you've been running for a long time, clients that you have or the products that you have as well, clients, customers that you have, they're used to those products, they're used to those services. Essentially, that is what you've built your business on. And then you might be asking to pivot. There could be things that you've gone through personally in evolution, and we are always evolving and growing as a human species. It feels like that's part of being here, is evolution and growth. And sometimes you can be stagnant, but we truly are ever evolving and growing. And so even when you have those personal shifts, naturally things will start to shift within your business. And this might be an unpopular opinion. I have equated rebranding to when you've gone through your own personal evolution and then the business is expanding and growing. And I understand some folks might not feel that way. They might feel that rebranding is something that you're doing when you're making over your business. It has nothing to do with your life, and that could be the case. However, I feel like if we are connected to our businesses, there's reasons that you would want to have a rebrand. So what is going on, for you personally, especially if you are your brand, what's going on for you personally with the evolution, especially even if there's new skill sets. So if I want to use an example of myself, I first started out with my business. It was heart to heart holistic. It was very much more of being a holistic practitioner, doing lymphatic drainage with aromatherapy, much more hands-on body work. That's where my business started. Working with people on emotional levels, spiritual levels, but the focus was physical. People were coming in for physical conditions that we were addressing. Something that was lovely with the essential oils is they do have these properties that target physical ailments, but they work so beautifully with the emotional realms. So a lot of the time, and this is even where things started to transition for my work, I started to notice so often that yes, people were coming in for physical conditions, but there was an emotional component. So it like that's even how things started to gradually change. I loved doing the body work. I loved having my hands on people, and I didn't do deep tissue. It was very light, gentle touch with the lymphatic drainage, because you're not you're not wanting to go deep. You're just like, the lymph system is essentially the waste disposal system of the body. So it's just gentle, you're just getting all of the lymph to move so that it can be properly processed and release toxins. So I loved that work, but at the same time, because I have always been an intuitive, connected into the spiritual realm, messages would come through, and then, I would ask about messages. I started transitioning into doing more energy work with it. So there was a natural pivot that happened with my business. And if I'm being fully transparent with it, I had always wanted to work more in the intuitive arts or the metaphysical arts. But for me, the practicality of it, I wanted to have something that was credible. So the lymphatic drainage was credible. Being the holistic practitioner was credible in my eyes at the time, where, people would take it seriously. I really struggled with wanting people to take the work seriously. So in my mind, I didn't feel like you could just be that quote unquote healer. But we grow and we evolve, and eventually people would come in more for the messages. And there was an element of being uncomfortable with that, right? It's like, oh my gosh, what's going to come through for someone? What if it's not what they want to hear? Which it doesn't matter if it's not what they want to hear. What will come through for them. But that's just even a little story about where I started. I don't do body work at all anymore, like the hands-on body work. And I have even pulled away from a lot of the energetic treatments that I was doing. I still will do them, but more with sound. But even those I've pulled away from. So knowing that we're going to grow and we're going to evolve, and it's okay to pivot. It's okay to pivot. Not everybody is going to come along for the ride, and that's okay too. A big fear that comes up could be, well, are you going to have clients? Are they going to be there? The product, even if you have a product-based business, there can be a lot of fear if your customers are used to a specific product that you have or a specific offering that you have, and then there's that fear of, if you make this switch, will they be there? But could we say, will the same people be there? Not necessarily. Yes, to some, but not necessarily. And what you're stepping into, because this is the whole thing with the pivoting, it's really being authentic to yourself, to what you're passionate about, to how you're being asked to be of service, how you're wanting to be of service. And sometimes how you want to be of service is different than how you're being asked to be of service by the divine. But that's a whole other episode for us. So with the pivoting, once again, like the fears can come up of, are you going to have your clients? Are you going to have your customers? Is it going to feel out of left field for people? But truthfully, if you're going through these transformations, it might already be expressed in different ways, and you might not intentionally be expressing the pivot. So to know that with everything, it could be like training wheels for you. If you've got a new skill set that you've done training for, like you could have gone through a training and now you're wanting to bring that into your business. Maybe there's things like, for myself, heart to heart holistic. Oh my God. I completely let go of all the lymphatic drainage massage and just went more into energy work and the intuitive arts. So it completely fell off. But for some of you, let's say you were in, your business was more of, I even want to say like creative arts. Maybe you were doing intuitive arts or painting and like being a creative in that way. And now you're doing coaching, right? And you're pivoting into coaching, but maybe you're still going to incorporate art into your coaching, right? Like if that's part of you, that's part of what you do, you still might incorporate it into what you're doing, but you're pivoting. Now, instead of only creating art and selling art or doing art classes, you're working with people either one-on-one or in a group capacity where they're going beneath the surface. It's not just a painting. It's not just a drawing. It's not just working with ceramics. It's you're going deeper. You're expanding. So if there are fears, because that's going to be the main thing that'll come up in many areas, or the how does this work? But if that's coming up for you, something that's important is to ask yourself, if your business was to stay the way that it was, would you be happy? Would you feel fulfilled? Because sometimes making the pivots could be hard, especially if your business is thriving, especially if you're making good money doing what you're doing. But what if your heart's not in it? What if you're not as passionate about it anymore? So yeah, you could keep moving forward with your business as the way it is, making money, but are you fulfilled? Is your heart in it? Does it feel in alignment? Does it feel that it's still in integrity for you? I find for myself, so much of what I do and what I teach, and just, a lot of the work that I've done and the work that I do with people is because I've been through it, or I do it. It's just, if I am sharing with people, let's say for the example, the Akashic records, which I'm letting go of in my business, if I was teaching people how to open the Akashic records, but I didn't work with them myself, that doesn't feel an integrity. If I wasn't working with them with myself, but I'm doing courses to show people how to do it, but I have no personal experience or practical experience, or haven't worked with people in their records, it just doesn't seem to feel in alignment. So once again, everything that I'm bringing forward, everything that I'm teaching, I've been there. I've been in the experience. I've seen what's worked, what hasn't worked, even with clients, knowing what has been beneficial for them, knowing what could be done without in different areas. So it's through the lived experience, it's through the practical experience. And that's important too. So yeah, okay, if you could keep your business running in the ways that it was, but it is important. No, we're not going to love everything. Okay, we're not going to love like everything we do in our businesses, but it is important to have that heart invested in it. And things can change. Oh my gosh, things can change. I found so a lot of the pivots that are happening for me is going into the retreats more full force and focusing on the coaching method, Path of the Heart, that's been created from my extensive work with clients. So I'm going in that direction more, but in a way that's, digestible for people, in a way that it can be shared too. Um, and in a way, like, it's not so out there. And there's nothing wrong with being very mystical and out there. It's important to be aware of these other realms that we're in. But sometimes you can get lost in that, and that might not be for everyone. Once again, in your business, you're not going to be for everyone. But I really want to connect with people in a way that feels meaningful, and in a way where it's almost like nobody gets left behind. Once again, I know we're not going to be for everyone, and that's a poor business practice if you want to be for everyone, right? But I want to create something that, let's put it this way: the Akashic Records is not for everyone, and that's okay. That is okay. But the healing that is available through it can be found in other ways too. And the transformation that can be found through the Akashic Records can be found in other ways too. So that's more of the pathway that I'm going, where it is opening up to yourself, opening up to your spiritual self, and opening up to God and the divine, having that direct connection where you don't need the middleman or anything else, where you can really be in that state connected to that higher power and receive healing and transformation through that in a practical way, where there's results for it, where you can return to it and not feel like you need to book a healing session, that you need to get the coaching session. So it's just, things are transforming in that way. So the pivots, you might feel change coming for a long time and you could resist it, but there will be situations that happen that will make it more apparent that it's time to pivot, especially if your heart's not in something. Like, that's the big gauge for it, if your heart is no longer in it, because then you're just going through the motions. Once again, you could be really good at it. People can feel that. And I don't know. I just don't know from my personal experience if it's fair for the people that you're there to support if you're not in it. And so once again, like for me with the Akashic Records, I stopped working in them. Like, I wasn't working in them the way that I had been working in them previously. I wasn't actively using them as much, even with clients. Like, I'd start pulling away from the sessions. So then when I was doing the courses, I would be in them and involved, but I wasn't using them in my daily life anymore. Like, I just was connecting in other ways. So it didn't feel as genuine and sincere as it had before. So I really started to look at that, and I resisted. Oh my gosh, especially, that was my foundation for my business. That was my main income in many ways for my business, but it didn't feel genuine. And that's unfair, I feel, for, the students and clients coming to see me. So with the pivots, looking at what you're really loving in your business. So it's kind of doing an inventory too of looking at what you're loving in your business. What are you fired up about in your business? And what's kind of, so-so? And prioritizing things. Even with clients, like what ways can you support? What ways can you be of service, of the highest service for God, source divine? And to ask those questions, because sometimes, what you have as your idea of service is very different. Sometimes it's the same, right? Sometimes it's the same, but it's important to ask those questions. So what are you fired up about in your business? What are you really loving in your business? Pivoting doesn't mean burning it all to the ground either. Pivoting can be refining offers. Pivoting could be refining offers. It can be expanding offers. Maybe you've got a 101 course for something. Now it's like the level 2, right? Pivoting could just be also an expansion and a refinement. And then pivoting could literally be starting from square one, brand new, totally different business. But what guides the pivot is where your heart is, and the intention of that, and the purity of the intention of that, and what feels like you are going to be of the most service, right? So to really look at and reflect that. Sometimes pivoting will involve a rebrand, sometimes it won't. Sometimes your business will stay the same, and then you just share you're going in a different direction, but you're still business XYZ. But sometimes pivoting could be a whole new brand, brand image, brand identity. So there's many ways that can unfold for you. But if you're feeling lackluster in what you're doing in your business, even if, it's new, if you've had it for a long time, start to be curious about if there were no perceived limitations. If there was no attachment, what would you want to do in your business? What would you be doing in your business? If you could be of the highest service for the divine, for God, source, divine, if you could be of the highest service to that, what would you be doing in your business? What would you add to your business? What would you take away to your business? Even your life. If you were being the highest service to God, source, divine, what would be altered and shifted in your life too, right? And so often, your business is a separate entity, but you are part of your business. You are the heart and soul of your business, especially if it's in the more hands-on stages. You really are. Mind you, we don't want our businesses to fall victim to us and our lives if things get chaotic and we crumble. We don't want the business to crumble, but to really look at, if you're being of the highest service for the divine, what would you be doing in your life differently? What wouldn't you change? And what would you be doing in your business differently? Or what would you keep? Lots of love. Thank you for listening to today's episode. And before you go, I wanted to offer an opportunity for reflection and contemplation. Was there anything that came up in this episode that you can use in your life moving forward, in your business moving forward? If so, what was it? Was there anything that came up that had you feeling charged, perhaps even triggered, being curious about what that was? And was there anything that came up in this episode that had you feeling seen and understood? taking a moment to bring those reflections into the sacred space of your heart or to journal. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with friends. Let me know on social media and the DMs. I'd love to hear how this episode impacted you. I appreciate you. Lots of love.